What kind of recommendation, early voting is, starts in 12 minutes or whatever. But for 2022, with the existing laws not changing anything, what would you recommend be done by the Secretary of State, by local officials who really want to make sure that there are fair and transparent elections? What change would you recommend?
Well, overall, I think that the local election officials want to have free and fair elections, and
maybe not in Harris County.
Maybe, but they're trying as best they can to put in place. And I would say that we have a lot of back and forth changes coming from the legislature. But I think the number one thing that can happen to give people security in what is taking place is to put themselves actually in a position to see what's taking place. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. And so the more people we can have watching the process, the better. Every candidate who's on the ballot has the ability to appoint 2 poll watchers per polling location for the election, including for early voting. I would encourage every candidate to put poll watchers in place, to have them in there to watch what's going on, take notes, see what's happening, because the best way to prevent problems on the back end is to notice them on the front end. And so I think that's the number one thing. I think from an overall systemic change that needs to take place, the legislature needs to look at whether or not our court system has jurisdiction over election-related questions prior to an election. We saw in the 2020 election across the country where courts would come in and say, well, we're going to extend voting hours. We're going to extend the voting times. Even in Texas here, we had the governor come out and say, well, we're going to extend voting, where early voting was extended during COVID from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. Again, done by executive order, not by anything of the legislature. I think that the U.S. Constitution makes it clear that the rules regarding voting are to be set by the legislature. I think that almost every state has in place a similar provision in their state constitution that says the legislature will set up the mechanisms for how we vote. And all of those are being abrogated to the courts, where the courts say, well, it's a pandemic, therefore we're going to add more time, or we're going to allow drop boxes, or we're going to allow more ballot by mail, or we're going to allow across the board ballot by mail. So the best thing that legislatures can do is take away that jurisdiction. Remember, our courts across the country, both at the federal level and most states, are courts of limited jurisdiction. They only have what jurisdiction the people give them through their representatives in the various legislatures, and take that away from them. Don't allow those courts to put in place orders like that. If it's a true emergency, there are mechanisms in place to deal with it.
Right.
Legislators can be called in emergency sessions all the time. Changes can happen very quickly. Governors can implement them very quickly. That's the way to address those type of problems.
Thanks for visiting the 1836 studios and the Conversation series. Make sure you click like on the video, share it with your friends, and click that little bell so you can be notified with our next conversation.